Hello and welcome back to the channel. For today's video we are going to be making this open back bodycon dress. It is absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, I want to say that today's video is actually quite long. Usually when I'm making a bodycon dress it's quite a short video, but today I wanted to walk you guys through all of the steps that you need to take, including how to cut your pattern pieces. Now I want you to remember something, that your pattern is not going to come with a seam allowance. You're going to add a seam allowance according to what you want. So I always use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on all of my seams, except the seam that is you're supposed to cut on fold. You don't add a seam allowance to that seam. That's the important thing that you need to know. Now when it comes to assembling your papers or your pattern pieces, everything that you need to know will be on the PDF document, but the most important one is you want to line up the numbers 1 to 6 for each row and the row below it, and your circles need to connect. That's the important note. Now let's move on to our fabric. For our fabric we are using a 4-way stretch. I'm using here is called Bonbon. It is 95% polyester and 5% elastin. It's nice, which makes it perfect when you're doubling the fabric. Remember, this is a seamless dress, and yeah, doubling the fabric actually helps us make it seamless. Another important thing to note is that you're going to need about 1.5 meters of fabric. Also, remember, when you are cutting your fabric, you're going to align it along the selvage. This is to make sure that the stretchiest part of your fabric is running horizontally, which means it's running across your body. Now I'm putting my pattern piece like this, and I am going to start tracing it out. Now because this is a piece that is supposed to be cut on fold, I'm not folding my fabric and tracing it out. I'm laying out my fabric flat, then I'm tracing it out. I'm going to show you guys the reason why I do this. I find this to be the easiest way to do it, because I don't need to pin my actual paper onto my fabric, which can be quite tedious and annoying, and yeah. When you are almost done tracing the pattern piece, you are going to just make indications of where that fold is supposed to be. Then you are going to flip the pattern over, making sure that it is lining up with where you made those little marks to show where the fold is supposed to be. That's what you're going to do. Then you are going to retrace the pattern piece again. I know you can't see it, it's at night and you can't see the drawings with the fabric and everything, but it is all traced on. So the next thing you're going to do is you are actually going to fold your fabric in half. So here's an important thing to note, is that you want to be drawing on the wrong side of your fabric. When you fold it over, the two right sides of your fabric are going to be facing each other. So we are drawing on the wrong side of the fabric. Now what we want to do is we want to pin within where we trace. We want to pin within the lines going around the perimeter of the entire pattern piece. The reason why we're pinning so much is because when we start cutting the fabric, we don't want the fabric that is under to move. Now I've found that this is the most accurate way to cut your fabric. The problem with pinning paper onto the fabric is there's not a lot of room for mistake. You know, like your pieces move around, the piece under is going to move around and all of that. So as you can see with my pins, you can see that outline of those two pattern pieces. And what I love about this, using this method of cutting, is you don't have to, like I said, it's very tedious to have to fold the fabric, then trace the one piece, then fold the fabric again, then trace the other piece, when you can just do this and have both pieces be 100% accurate. So what you want to do at this point is you want to pin as much as you can to make sure that, like I said, no pieces are moving around. Now what I want to do is I'm going to cut first a rectangle off that pattern piece. The reason why I'm doing this is sometimes when you're cutting your fabric, it can be like too heavy, and the rest of the fabric as you're cutting it out will start to tug on your piece, which is quite annoying. So I like to cut out that rectangle, and it also helps you not have those awkward extra pieces on the rest of the fabric, on the leftover fabric. Anyway, I'm going to now cut out this piece. So another thing I love about cutting your fabric like this is because remember we folded the piece right sides together and then we cut everything. Therefore, when we're taking out our pins, you're just going to take out the side pins, right? Leave the pins that are on the neckline and the armhole and also the bottom seam. Just remove the pins that are on the side seams. Now what I'm going to do is my pins on my bottom seam are currently running horizontally. I want to change their direction to run vertically, and from there I'm going to set them aside because that is how I'm going to take them to my sewing machine or your serger, whatever you're using. This is how we're going to take them over there. So you don't need to unpin everything, then align the two pieces and then pin it together. This is like a little hack, a little quick way to do things.
Wonder who you think you're playing with. I'm just telling myself to keep playing this.
Now I'm going to repeat the same process for all pieces. This is now the back piece. Remember, I'm cutting along the selvage, then I'm folding the pieces. I'm folding the fabric right sides together. Then I'm going to lay my pattern piece, make sure that there's enough space outside of it. Then I am going to trace it, pin. Then I'm gonna have my two pieces. So now this is my top back piece right there. I did the exact same thing I did for the front piece, where I just changed the direction of my pins to now be vertical. I pinned my armholes, my bottom seam, and my neckline. I've done the exact same thing for the skirt piece, the front piece. Obviously you guys saw the front piece the first time around, and I also did the same thing for my skirt piece, my back bottom piece basically. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take this to your sewing machine. If you are using a serger, take it to your sewing machine and do a basting stitch on the neckline, the armhole, and the bottom seam. Remember, don't touch the shoulder seams just yet. If you are going to be using your sewing machine only and don't have a serger, you just want to do a not a basting stitch, you do a zag stitch. Sorry, you're going to do a zag stitch of that top seam and that bottom seam for the back piece, and you want to do the exact same thing that you would have done if you're using a serger, whereby you're just stitching your neckline, your armholes, your bottom seams for the two pieces that do have an armhole, and then for the back piece you want to be doing the top and bottom. So have the shoulder open and have the side seams open. That's the most important thing. Now, as you can see, this is my basting stitch on all of my pieces, right? I'm just showing you I've stitched. I just want to continue to reiterate what we're stitching here. It's armhole, neckline, other armhole, and then bottom seam. Now, what you're going to do from this point, if you are using a serger, is you are going to go ahead and serge those seams together. If you're not using a serger, you would have just gone straight ahead and used your zigzag stitch, then cut off the excess seam allowance, because remember, a serger is going to be cutting off the excess seam allowance as you're serging. So but then if you're using a zigzag stitch, you obviously want to cut it off using a scissor. Now I'm taking that back piece and I'm turning it inside out. When I turn the back piece inside out, my front piece is still the wrong side out, right? So with this back piece, I'm turning it so that the right sides of the fabric are on the outside, while my front piece is still in its same position. What I'm going to do when I'm done turning this piece inside out is I am going to fit it inside my front piece, and I'm going to make sure that the shoulders are matching. So I'm going to make sure that the shoulders are matching. Anyway, you guys will see, you will see as I'm doing it, right? So the one shoulder goes inside and comes out the other shoulder. Then we're going to line up the seams. Then we are going to pin. And because this is almost like mat, whatever you do to the one side, you need to do to the other side. So now we're going to fit the other shoulder to the other side of the front piece, the other shoulder. The other shoulder of the front piece, and then we are just going to make sure that everything is aligning. Then we are going to pin. It is very important to pin to make sure that nothing falls, you know, nothing moves around when you are sewing or when you are serging. Now we're going to stitch those seams right there. When you are done stitching the seams right there, you can just test it out by pulling the piece inside, and you will notice that everything is 100% aligned, everything is nice and neat. Now we are going to put that piece back to how it was originally by turning it inside out again. Like I said, sewing is almost like maths. So whatever you do to the top, you're gonna do to the bottom. So for the bottom back piece, we're gonna turn it inside out so that the right sides of the fabric are out. Then we are going to put them inside the front piece, line up the seams, make sure that everything is 100% matching up. Then you are going to pin those side seams.
Sometimes it's hard to tell, so you may not be in the mood to learn what you think you know. There are times when I
Another thing that I want you to notice that we are also going to be pinning that back top piece at the side seam. So everything, the pieces should be lined up on the side seam. Then you're going to stitch that side seam closed. Then you're going to stitch the other side seam. But a very important thing you want to do is to leave a small opening when you are stitching, because you are going to use that small opening to turn your piece inside out. I have now stitched my side seams and I've left that small opening. I'm going to cut off the excess threads that I have. Then I'm going to use that tiny little opening to turn my dress inside out.
what you feel. love affair began. But if you feel more like a fail, confusion can give way to doubt. For there are times when I fall short. What I say I'm all about.
And voila, you have your dress. Now the only thing that is missing is for you to stitch that little opening close. So what we're going to do is we are going to use hand stitch an invisible stitch to close it. So what you want to do when you making an invisible stitch is obviously you're going to have your piece, the two pieces that you want to sew together like so. They're already folded in to stitch, ready to stitch. Then you're going to take a needle and a thread. And so basically with an invisible stitch, what you want to be doing is you are going to, here's that little pocket, right? So you want to be going in from one piece to the other. So you're going to poke one side of the fabric, the one side of the fabric, then you're going to poke the other side of the fabric, then poke the other side of the fabric, going from left to right or top to bottom, however you want to see it. There are a lot of tutorials on YouTube that show you how to do an invisible stitch. Please do check them out. But basically this is what it will look like when you are done with your invisible stitch. You will be 100% done with your dress. So I really hope that you guys found this extra helpful. And yeah, when you're done making your dress, don't forget to share a picture. We want to see how you look. I know you're gonna look good in the dress, but that is it from me.
By the way, just got in town, and I won't